Good morning, one and all. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Before I do anything else, let's say a very quick good morning to my mate Patrizio over on Instagram, who is watching TPMS location. We'll be talking about those later in the show, fairly early on in the show, actually, but wanted to say a very quick good morning to Patrizio, who is watching us over there. How the devil is everyone doing? Do need to get a couple of things out of the way before we go any further. On Monday this week, I mentioned that I was writing a new column on the construction sector's failure to engage with all things electrical. Well, that column dropped first thing this morning, and you can read it right now if you would like to do so. I can tell you, if I get to the right place, I have just posted the link in the chat. If you are one of our WhatsApp group, and if you're not, why the hell aren't you? You can actually find the link over there, and I know several of you have watched it already. Love to get your feedback, because I do think the subject matter, to electrify or not to electrify, that is the question. Love to get your thoughts on that. Also, if you were watching the WhatsApp group yesterday, you will know that I posted a 10-second video of a scantily clad female demolition worker going about her business. I knew precisely what I was doing when I posted the same video over on Instagram, but by God, did that rattle the woke windows. Dozens of online do-gooders, keyboard warriors, and the professionally offended telling me to do better, or that they were quitting the channel. But here's the thing. The video actually gained us more followers than we lost. Now, bearing in mind, I speak regularly as an advocate for all things sorry, something just happened in the chat there, and it came and then it went again. Yeah, bearing in mind, I speak openly about my belief that we should have more women in construction. Listen, I'm a vocal advocate for women in construction, but I did just do this as a tongue-in-cheek thing. Perhaps more importantly, now bearing in mind we've had people, I'm quitting your channel, it shouldn't be doing. Where was that outrage when demolition and constructions workers were maimed or killed in the line of duty? Where was that outrage when 10 demolition companies were fined almost £60 million for their part in a bid rigging scandal? And where was that outrage when companies have collapsed, leaving hundreds, if not thousands, of demolition and construction workers unemployed through no fault of their own? As I said, I knew precisely what I was doing when I posted that video to Instagram. I just didn't realise that some in the industry have lost all sense of perspective. If you're going to get upset about something, how about we get upset about people dying? How about that? Rather than a girl in a thong. Maybe. Lol is not working on your keyboard, Mark. I'm not sure what that's about, but I do. A couple of people arrived very early this morning. Dan Cullen, Peter McKenna, and who else? I think Andy Darvell arrived before we started. I was sat here beavering away on that. Couldn't see them. Wasn't looking at the screen, so my apologies for that. And speaking of people that have arrived, let me very quickly do a roundup. Ken Hatter has just arrived, and he's got the usual mixed bag of weather. Footy is in the house. Peter McKenna is here. Andy Hare from the mighty Northern Track is here too. As I've said, going right back to the very beginning, Dan Cullen is here. Peter McKenna is here. And there he is with his customary welcome. Andy Darvell saying morning, 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 everyone. Yes, morning indeed. And it is 1st of May. And it's hump day as well. So happy hump day and happy pinch punch 1st of the month day as well. Who else do we have here? Somebody's just posted something. Jonathan Duras is here as well. Jonathan, active participant in our Mystery Machines, which is coming up in the not too distant future. But before we get to that, I do need to do this. It is Wednesday, the 1st of May. The 1st of May. 9 days' time, I'll be in Italy. Can't wait. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. And this is episode 711. Don't know why that amused me, but it did. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. In today's show, you'll see a Finnish wind turbine blown down, though not by the wind. Dust suppression makes tracks. I'll be getting to that in just a moment. We'll be hearing from a satisfied case customer, and we're catching up with OilQuick, which we caught up with during Intermat 2024. Plus, like to discuss this. We all know who the most famous equipment manufacturers are, but are they necessarily the best? We're going to walk and talk to discuss precisely that thing. But before we get to all of that, there is a small matter of today's mystery machine. So let's have the animation. I will get to that in just a moment, but Andy Hare says a mystery Instagram post. I've checked it now, though, and after several careful watches, I can say she probably needs to reconsider her PPE choices. She was wearing a mask. I mean, she was protected from, mostly facially protected from dust. Thank you, Andy. And another Andy. Unfortunately, I can't share any photos or video of my lovely new machine or the massive job, as there is a non-disclosure agreement in place. But what a machine and what a sight. Yes, Andy Darvell, now part of the AR Demolition team. I know where he's working. I'm not sure if that's a top secret thing, but I know where he's working. Hope all goes well, Andy. Hope you're settling in just fine. Now, I did mention the fact that we're going to do the mystery machine, so let's do that. Here's what you have to work with. What would you say that is? As I said yesterday, if you're watching over on Instagram, please feel free to take part. Although if you're watching, chances are you're watching on a mobile device, and that picture you're looking at is probably about that big, which is not going to be very helpful. But break out the magnifying glasses and see if you can identify precisely what it is. Mick Norton, good morning from an Asda queue in Wakefield. I mean, we've had people watching from Australia and Puerto Rico and various other places around. Don't remember anybody ever actually tuning in from an Asda queue, particularly one in Wakefield. Footy says it's a dump truck. Maybe. And there's Dan Cullen saying congratulations to Mr. Darvell, who is now, as I say, part of the AR Demolition team. I've just noticed you've actually got AR in your name, Darvell. I don't know actually why I bother with these mystery machines, because with one frame, somebody's got it. That somebody is Mr. Muirhead. Was it really that easy? Was it? JCB 714, back when JCB used to make an ADT, and just to prove that I'm not on a wind-up and Gary's not on a wind-up, there you are. JCB 714 from back in the day, circa 2007, I'm led to believe, according to the photograph it was. I thought they'd stopped making ADTs before then. I'm going to say good morning. There he is. That is my friend Patrizio. We're going to come to your product in just a moment, Patrizio, but good morning. I'll tell you what, we'll crack on, because I do need to share exactly what it's all about. I want to do this one very quickly, though. Footy says, Andy, I wish you all the luck in the world of driving that awesome machine. Wish I had a demo ticket so I could drive one just like it. All the best. Hope it all goes well for you. And there's Gary Muirhead apologising for having ruined everyone's fun. And there is our friend Craic, all the way from CSW Groundworks, who is taking part today. So I am going to get to Patrizio and his superb product in just a moment, and he's not paying me to say that, but we do need very quickly to remind you of our question of the day. Yeah, our question of the day today is quite simply, if you didn't work in demolition or construction, what would you do? I think I'm past the point where I'm going to get a phone call from West Ham to be their new midfield maestro. And I'm a bit of a one-trick pony, so I'd probably end up writing about something else. But what about you? If you weren't doing the job you're doing right now, what would you do? What would you prefer to do? What are you qualified to do? Let us know in the chat. We'll come back to that at the end of the show. But I've kept Patrizio waiting more than long enough, so it is time to get to that part of the show. So, what was my favourite product at Intermat? Well, that's not an easy question to answer, actually. In terms of technology, the Bobcat Rogue X2 and the Volvo HX40 hydrogen dump truck would probably take some beating. The Komatsu HD605-10 rigid truck was awesome, mainly because I love dump trucks. And as a demolition man, the Komatsu PC390 ultra-high demolition machine was very eye-catching indeed. But my personal favourite product might come as a surprise. Before I tell you what it is and show it to you in action, a bit of context. About 5 years ago, I was lucky enough to be part of a demolition fact-finding mission to Japan. It really was an incredibly memorable trip with superb highlights. Food, people, places, absolutely fantastic. But there were three things that I remember specifically about how the Japanese do demolition. First of all, the attachments they use are massive because the buildings are built to withstand earthquakes, so the columns and foundations are huge. The second thing is that they all wear hard hats with chin straps because they don't want them falling off if they should take a tumble. I now own 2 hard hats with chin straps, and I use them. Don't be fooled; they're not as uncomfortable as people would have you believe. But the third thing was that several of the sites that we saw while we were in Japan were using mini track-mounted cranes with dust suppression units mounted on top to aim water precisely where it was needed to keep the dust down. Now, I've seen lots of companies here in the UK, including Andy Larville's AR Demolition. They have a Manitou telehandler dedicated to dust suppression duties. But the appeal of those little crane-mounted dust suppression systems never left me. So there I was, strolling about the halls of Intermat when I came across precisely that product. At first glance, I assumed it was French, but it transpires they are, in fact, Italian. And this is what the product looks like. Now, I do need to dredge this off of my hard drive because it is quite a big file. Bear with me for 2 ticks while I dredge this up. Here we go. My apologies. I did the microphone thing again, didn't turn the microphone off, but apologies for that. But let me just say, I literally strolled down one of the aisles. I think I was on the way to the Komatsu stand at the time, and I bumped into that very product from TPMS location, or probably location or something like that. I don't know how you pronounce it, but I thought it was very, very good indeed. But I don't work on site, so, you know, my opinion counts for very little. But let me have a look at this. We have Graham Footy Williams saying hot. Dan Cullen saying great video. Peter McKenna saying Chinese mostly use water tankers with dust suppression blowers mounted to the rear. Dan Cullen saying that's hot. Mick Saunders, or Mick Wright, is saying yes, about bloody time, great idea. Andy Darvell, hot. Self-propelled dust suppression on any site is brilliant. The bigger units are a pain in the arse to get in place with a machine. Craig from CSW is saying that is very good. I can see the real benefits of this. Good vid. Totally agree. Now, if anybody would like to know more, you can actually find, that should read Patrizio. There's a T missing for some reason, but that is Patrizio's email address. I'll leave that on the screen. Failing that, if anybody would like to get in touch with Patrizio to find out more about that product, please just give me a call and I will drop you his details. Peter McKenna was enjoying the tune. Mick was saying, not an operative in sight. Yeah, absolutely. Bearing in mind, I realise the captions were in French, but that system is both programmable and remotely controlled. So you can remotely control it to get it to where you need it to be, and you can then set it. You can either aim it direct, you can do the rotation-y thing, you can do all of those things, which means that the guy that normally stood there driving the dust suppression unit can go away, get out of harm's way. Peter McKenna enjoyed the tune, and Dan Carr saying, isn't that badly placed to blown towards the operator? The one thing that you will never overcome, whatever system of dust suppression you use, is the wind. There's no beating the wind. But again, you know, bearing in mind that thing is remotely controlled and automated. Move it around, get it. Let me think. Get it upwind so you're blowing downwind, or the other way. I can't. You get the idea. Footy says, fantastic idea for demolition companies. Really good. Awesome. It is hot. I totally agree. I'm glad you liked it, because I have to admit, when I saw it, I was very, very, very impressed. Mainly because of the experience in Japan, because I'd seen that kind of thing over in Japan. I talked about it a lot. I've even written about it in my, can't remember what the name of the book was. Was it called A Japanese Adventure, something like that? I can't remember. But there's a book that I wrote after my trip to Japan. And I have to say, I came back thinking, yes, chin straps on your hard hat, one thing. Massive attachments, loved that. But yeah, the crane-mounted dust suppression systems, fantastic. You can work it from the cab. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what the range of that remote control system is. If Patrizio is still here, perhaps he'll be able to tell us. And I also don't know whether it's a tethered connection or whether it's done via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or something like that. But if it is something that the operator in the cab could actually wiggle around himself and get the water exactly where he needed it, I'd love to hear about it. Jonathan Duras also says that looks a decent bit of kit. I totally agree. And we've had somebody called, let me see, E.R. Safadin, all the way from India. He is a demolition engineer. Good morning to you. I don't know what the time is in India at the moment, but good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Hope you're having a good day. And yeah, demolition engineer, you're in precisely the right place. And Gary Muirhead, just to round things out, is saying that the system from TPMS location is hot. It's universal. It is hot. So hot, in fact, I will probably need to put that in the roundup show at the end of the year. Let's have a look. No need for a guy to change positions. A plant op could do that in his cab to suit him, if that's the case. Yeah, if it is like a Bluetooth or a Wi-Fi system that you could do that with, I'm sure that is the case. Not so straightforward if it's a tethered system, but yeah, Patrizio, if you are still here, can you operate that system from within the cab of an excavator? I'd love to hear about it. Now, let's crack on, but I'm sure we'll discuss that more at the end of the show, but let's have a bit of this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Andy Darvell says, on site here, we're using a tractor and water bales with a 3-inch movable monitor on the back, which is controlled from the tractor cab. Gives a good jet of water, which goes about 20 meters, which is good. Yeah, certainly if you are on a high reach, you do need that what do they call it? The throw. You need the throw, don't you, to be able to get the water precisely where you need it. All of which kind of takes me back. Do you remember when we featured the Jumbo, the Despair operating over in Italy? Incidentally, I'll be there in 9 days' time, but that's a whole other story. Yeah, if you remember rightly, they've got a couple of repurposed cement mixers, but that's remote control as well. And the reasoning behind that, and I think the same system or the same rules apply here. If you are putting water between the operator and the attachment, the operator can't see precisely what he's doing. So the ability to put the water precisely where it's needed. So the system that the Despair have developed themselves, or something like TPMS, absolutely the same thing. And Peter McKenna has just sent us this. Screenpod.co.uk do a track dust suppression unit. I did not know that. I'm going to go and check them out. And yes, Demo Darv, Andy Darvell says concrete pumps at Desperate. Precisely that. That's exactly what they were doing. And it works superbly well. Seen it up close and personal. So I know that absolutely works. Not sure what that all is, but I'm going to get back to that. So our follow-up film really does require no introduction. It's a Finnish wind turbine being demolished by explosives or blown down. What more is there to say? Let me just show you. Yeah, nice job. Made all the better, I think, by the fact that the wind turbine looked a bit like one of the beasties from War of the Worlds. Now, bearing in mind he's doing this in second or possibly even third language, our friend Patrizio has just responded over on, where is he watching from? He's watching on Facebook. So, getting back to the track-mounted dust suppression unit. The power of the cannon is 65 meters without wind. It can reach buildings of 12 floors. The machine can be controlled remotely 200 meters away via Bluetooth. So, going back to Dan Cullen's point, if the operator of the excavator, the higher reach in that instance, wanted to operate that system from within the cab, he can do so. Just fire up the remote control there, put the machine exactly where you need it to be, set the functions and the throw and everything else, and you're good to go. I was already impressed. I'm even more impressed now. Let's have a look. Demo, Darl says, perfect, top work. What an environment to work in. Absolutely beautiful. Yes, that did come down beautifully as well. Footy says, wind turbines not as good as they make out. Yeah, I've sort of lost my way on that one, but thank you very much indeed, Footy. Wind turbines, listen, I remain a fan. It all goes back to the article that I've dropped this morning. Electric, at least for now, is the way forward. Now, whether that's wind power, solar power, all of those things, electricity. And our friend Mick says, now that's an answer. Well done, your mate, Mark. Yeah, absolutely. Patrizio, thank you very much indeed for being here. Thank you. Well, thank you for developing the product. I think he said it's his uncle's product, that his uncle actually developed the product, but it's a bit of a family business, much like so many over in Italy. I think they've done a fantastic job, and it looks the part as well. As I say, I've seen one up close, so yeah, big fan of that. Big fan indeed. So let's crack on. Let's have a little bit of this. Ken Hatcher saying we need a new line from Scotland where all the wind generators are. There are so many things this country needs. That's one of them. Now, we do have a longer film coming up towards the end of the show, so I'm going to keep the introduction to this next one as brief as I possibly can. Here is a satisfied customer extolling the virtues of all things case.
I'm Rob Chesters, and our subcontractor Player Plant Hire is based in Derbyshire. So we do rural landscaping and estate work. We've done some work on HS2. I tried the 130E. I'm very impressed. Ultra smooth, it's quick, and precision. It's just unbelievable. Can't believe how good it is, to be honest, considering it's my first attempt in one. I just think it's so smooth and precise. I'd like to try a 145-0 tail swing of yours. Noise levels were low, it was comfy, seemed a lot of space in the cab. Joysticks were very light, track pedals again light. Yeah, but really good, really good.
Yeah, very quickly. I thought it was a bit quiet. I don't know why. It shouldn't have been, but it was. Footy is going back to work. He's got a reduced dig to do, so have a great time. I'll try to see you tomorrow. Have a good day. Stay safe, everyone. Go home to your loved ones. Yes, please do all of those things. That would be marvellous. Dan Cullen saying, nice bit of kit. Indeed it is. Now, let me take... and there's Peter McKenna saying goodbye to our friend Footy. Now, obviously... I'll come back to that in just a moment. Going back to Case. Case is obviously a very famous brand, which is the perfect lead into the longer film we've got coming down the tubes in just a second. But I do need to address this from Gary Muirhead. Do you remember the live eagle that was on the Case stand at Hillhead last year? I do. I do remember that very well. And I also remember meeting a very... I don't suppose it was similar at all. Pretty similar eagle over at Crystal Palace when I went to see West Ham. Beat them. They didn't last time we played them. We got properly turned over. But yes, obviously Crystal Palace, known as the Eagles, they have eagles right there. Andy Darvell, right, guys, back to work for me, putting the LaBounty shear back on and start cutting again. Yes, new employer, you can't be idling your time away looking at this old nonsense. So Andy, go and have a fantastic day. Give my regards to the whole team at AR Demolition. Big fans. So yes, I said I was going to show you something else, and I'm about to do that. Let's have a look. We need a bit of this, I think.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
So, if you were here on Monday, or possibly yesterday, I can't actually remember, you might recall me talking about my plan to do a bit more exercise and to film some chatty footage while I was about it. Well, yesterday afternoon, Ruth was out and about. The sun was shining, and by some fluke, the camera battery, for the first time ever, was fully charged. So I took myself off for a walk and a long talk with myself. And I'm about to show you the outcome. Now, bear with me. This needs to come off the hard drive as well. It should be this one.
So, before we get started,
wanted to just very quickly tell you what prompted this video that you're about to watch. About a week ago, went to the doctors for my annual diabetes checkup, all hunky-dory. Cholesterol under control, blood pressure under control, blood sugar under control. There is only two areas in which I am falling down, apparently. The first is I'm not sufficiently hydrated, so I'm drinking more water. But the other thing is I'm not taking enough exercise. Now, the idea of walking around pointlessly and aimlessly for 10, 20 minutes a day doesn't really excite me particularly. But I actually thought, well, what about if I take a camera with me and I capture some of my thoughts and considerations and that kind of thing? So that's exactly what I'm going to try and do. The series you're about to watch, the episode you're about to watch of what will hopefully be a new series, is going to be called Walk and Talk. Because guess what? I'm only walking and talking. So that basically is the premise of exactly what it is I'm trying to do. Let's get into the content. And the content itself is going to kind of mix two of my very favourite things. First thing is going to be food. Second thing is going to be demolition and construction equipment. Not the easiest things to match together, but I'm going to do my best. So, let's get started. If you ever find yourself in Philadelphia, I strongly urge you to check out a thing called a Philadelphia or a Philly cheesesteak. I'm not going to get into recipe descriptions here because apparently there are variations, but this is basically a steak sandwich with cheese on it. Now, the guidebooks will tell you that Philadelphia is a city divided along cheesesteak lines. According to the guidebooks, there are those that prefer the Philly cheesesteaks from Pat's, and there are those that prefer them from Geno's. Apparently, both are incredibly famous, and both are very, very well regarded. However, according to locals who know about these things, the best Philly cheesesteak in the world comes from neither of those two places. It actually comes from a place called Cafe Carmela. Stick with me here. You see, Pat's and Geno's are unquestionably the most famous, but according to locals, Cafe Carmela is better and is more authentic. Now, I've only ever eaten 2, 3, possibly 4 Philly cheesesteaks in my entire life, so I don't have a dog in this fight, I'm not an expert, but I do have a British comparison. When I was growing up, I grew up in London, and one of my favourite meals then, and my favourite meals now, is pie and mash from a traditional Cockney pie and mash shop. Now, I grew up in Battersea in South East London. My personal favourite at the time was a shop called Harrington's. Sadly, Harrington's no longer exists, at least it doesn't there. So when that closed down, I switched allegiance, and I switched allegiance to Manze's over in Towerbridge Road in London, which is basically just round the corner from where my father grew up. So as far as I'm concerned, Manze's is now the standard by which all pie and mash shops are judged. However, once again, if you go onto the internet, when you check out pie and mash shops, you would be led to believe that the best pie and mash actually comes from Goddard's in Greenwich. And I can assure you that is most definitely not the case. Goddard's is not Cockney food for Londoners, it's Mockney food for Americans. Personally, I would never eat at Goddard's. None of my friends would, none of my family would. It's there, basically, it's more famous because it's probably got a bigger marketing budget, but it's not as good as Manze's or Kelly's or Moorings or any of the other pie and mash shops around London. So you're probably wondering at this point, what has all that got to do with construction equipment? And here is my point. Now, to my mind, the Germans and the Swedes make probably the best excavators in the world. The Brits make probably the best backhoe loaders in the world. The Americans make the best dozers, and I think it's fairly safe to say that the Italians make the best attachments. Or do they? You see, it's very easy to look at the construction equipment market and say that Volvo and Liebherr and JCB and Caterpillar make the very best. But they actually make the most famous. Now, nobody I know would contest that McDonald's makes the best burger in the world. They make the most famous, they're readily available everywhere, but nobody I don't think would argue that McDonald's makes the best burger. So, who really does make the best excavator, the best backhoe loader, the best attachments, the best dozers? Is there a small artisanal manufacturer of equipment out there that makes just enough for its local or its domestic market. They never appear at international exhibitions, and they build their machines in the tens or the hundreds rather than the hundreds of thousands. Manufacturers that aren't looking for international fame and glory, that are quite satisfied with their local or their national market. So as my walk for today comes to an end, my question, I guess, is, are there any small, specialist, artisanal manufacturers out there that are making products, excavators, wheel loaders, dozers, attachments, that are not just as good as their bigger, more famous counterparts, but are actually better? Now, personally, my mind turns immediately to Larini over in Italy, obviously a very, very specialist manufacturer, and I know in the demolition field they're more known as a modifier, but they manufacture as well. The products they manufacture are highly specialised, but highly sought after. But are there any more? So, that's my walk for today done. A little bit out of breath because I'm out of practice, but it'll get better, I'm sure. Let us know in the chat. Do you know of any manufacturers out there that are relatively small, relatively specialised, but that you believe make a better product than their bigger and better known rivals, competitors and counterparts? That's Walk and Talk, first episode in the can. Thanks for watching. Can't believe I got out of breath walking around the block. But there you are. That was my question. And I realise there's a lot of build up to that, but it was a real stream of consciousness thing. I had the idea. I thought, yeah, I'll grab a hold of the camera and I'll go and take a walk. That's exactly what I did. Andy Hare, straight on the case. I mean, Andy Hare is one of those, I think. Small, specialist, artisanal attachment manufacturers, tough one. Have to think about this carefully. I realise he's saying that tongue in cheek, but there you are. You know, if you go to a regular OEM of attachments, you kind of, you go to the spec sheet and you say, I want that one there. A bit like ordering your Chinese meal via the internet. Go to Andy Hare. It's custom built effectively. Not all of them, but some of them. If there's something particularly if there's something particularly you want on your attachment, Andy, within reason, will be able to do it. Great walk and talk. Thank you very much. High Dreamer. Yeah, High Dreamer. I certainly count them amongst them. They have a couple of products that they do exceptionally well. You know, their mini dump truck, obviously, and perhaps a little less known is their backhoe loader. But yeah, I mean, that mini dump truck, I mean, bearing in mind, we've already featured it as our mystery machine today, the JCB 714. I reckon JCB made that for a decade or thereabouts, give or take, maybe a little bit more than that. Couldn't make it fly. And yeah, here we are, High Dreamer, up in the Danish, right? The Danish? Jim Turner, I'd say Hudig are fairly specialist and bloody brilliant too. Yeah, absolutely. How many people in the industry? I mean, I realise we have some proper anoraks in this audience. How many people in the wider industry are aware of Hudig? They're not as famous as your JCBs and your Caterpillars and your Cases and your the other backhoe loader manufacturers, but they're off doing their own thing. Very smart it is too. Awesome. Michael Williams, that was a good topic. So many out there. Thank you very much indeed. That's over on Instagram. Yeah, and good morning, Michael. I know you said good morning earlier, just didn't get to you in time. Let's have a look. What else have we got here? This wasn't really what I was trying to focus on. Thank you very much indeed for that, Dan. I will be doing more of these at some point in the future. Mick says, not a fan of American cheese. Try a steak sandwich with Stilton. That will make you think, oh, see, that does float my boat. Gary Muirhead says, you look like Paul Whitehouse from the Fast Show. Brilliant! I'm not sure which of the Fast Show characters you're referring to. I'm hoping it's not Suits You, Sir. Actually, I wouldn't mind that. Yes, I was talking about Goddard's Pie and Mash, which is an abomination. Sorry, Goddard's, but it is. And Mick says, it's in Greenwich. What do you expect? Fair play. On the subject of steak, Mick, try and get hold of Black Sticks Blue. You won't regret it. I'm assuming that is a cheese. Mick says, always willing to take advice, mate. Thank you. Okay, I have some advice for you. Drop the Millwall, support West Ham. I'll see you in the car park after. I can't see him changing allegiance, to be perfectly honest. And I'm expecting the swearing to start any second now. Thank you very much indeed for that, everybody. As I say, I will be doing more on this. One of the subjects I've got in mind, actually, and I was... here's another belter. Yeah, that one hadn't occurred to me. Menzie muck. Now, I realise we don't see too many of them in this country. They are obviously designed for working on mountains, effectively. Very, very specialist. But man alive, yeah, off to one side of the industry. A little niche all their own. And man alive, do they do a good job. I'm actually quite relieved that that's as mild as it is. Mick is saying, sod off. Yes, Mick. I will do precisely that. Yes, I was thinking. I was watching the TV yesterday afternoon before I went for my walk, and our incumbent Prime Minister. I realise, unelected by the public, and I'm well aware of all of that, and I do think he is a complete wet wipe. I really do. But it set me thinking. You think about all of the. And I'm just doing recent past. You think about all of the people that have run this country in the recent past. So Sunak, Truss, Theresa May, David Cameron, all of these people, going even further back than that. When was the last time we had a leader that you considered to be a true leader? And where I was going with this was I wrote the original and the best version of the history of the National Federation of Demolition Contractors. And when I wrote it, I was referring back to people like Sidney Hunt Sr., Claude Brown, David Keane, proper industry statesmen. The sort of people you could send them into bat at the House of Commons and they'd give the MPs a proper going over in a very, very considered and eloquent way. When was the last time we had a great demolition leader? I wonder. I'll be honest with you, I'm struggling to think of one. Mick says, for those in London, get out and vote. Get rid of the mug Khan. I think that's fairly universal. Yeah, absolutely. Now, bearing in mind, I could be wrong, but I'm fairly sure somebody told me this. I think Winston Churchill actually died about 2 years before, or 2 weeks rather, before I was born. I'm 59. We have honestly not had a worthy leader since then. I'm not arguing with you. I'm inclined to agree. Peter says Churchill was the only leader I found worthy of praise. Yeah, and you can't. I think there is a temptation among politicians. I've always thought this. I'm doing poorly in the polls. Who can we go to war with? And I've always thought that you do earn additional brownie points if you happen to be the Prime Minister at a time of war or conflict. But Tony Blair was that. Don't think too many people would consider him one of the world's great leaders. Rishi Sunak, we're in conflict. We're part of the conflict in the Ukraine. We're part of the conflict over in Gaza. Is he getting any brownie points for that? I don't believe he is. So yeah, that may be the next subject matter, if I can think of enough to say from my round the block walk. That may be the subject matter. I do have one more thing to show you this morning, so I'm going to crack on. Let me throw up a little bit of this. Right. Yes, we come to the final film of the day, and it's time to wind the clock back by about a week-ish. Head back to Paris for our catch-up with the mighty OilQuick, which, again, I need to pull off my hard drive because Fred only specialises in very, very big files. Here we go.
Hello, we are in Intermat 2024 in Paris. Lots of people coming to visit our stand and the different product and innovation from OilQuick. We are presenting all the fleet of the system, different system we have in OilQuick. We have the rail division, we have the construction, we have demolition and recycling solution. So here we have the OQC system for recycling. So it's for handling machine. We can change the tool between grapple with hydraulic solution to electric solution for magnet. So here we have the OQ120. This is the biggest size we have in quick coupler. It's for excavator from 90 to 200 ton, depend of the configuration in demolition. Here we have tilt rotator solution. So we are in double quick coupler solution. We can connect and disconnect the tilt rotator without any hoses in full automatic system. And below we can also add a tool like a grapple, cleaner, etc. So here we have the OQ rail. It's a specific quick coupler for the rail excavator. Why it's specific? This is because we have 8 couplings for all hydraulic line we have on a rail machine.
And I even managed to turn the microphone off. I'm getting better, slightly better at this. That's about wraps things up for today's show, actually. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into the chat to see what you're all saying today. If you can't stick around for that, then do please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. I hope to see you again, possibly tomorrow, 10 a.m. But if you do have the time and the inclination, please stick around. I'll be back with the Craic immediately after this final word from our key show sponsor. That music sounds a bit weird. It may go wrong. I'll keep an eye. I'll keep an ear on it. Dan Cullen just responding to the OilQuick video at the end there. Oh my God, that's some hitch. The big one for demolition really is a piece of steel. It really is, and rail too. Yeah, absolutely, highly specialised. I know this is something we've discussed in the past. I think Gary Muirhead is something of a rail specialist. I know we've discussed that in the past. Specialist hitch for specialist tools. As it should be. Now, let me go back to the beginning of the chat. It's there was a queue here this morning. I did mention this earlier. At 8:03, an hour and 57 minutes before I was due to press the go button, Mr. Cullen was in the house, closely followed by Mr. McKenna, and then I think Andy Darvell arrived as well, just a couple of minutes before we were due to go live. You can do that. You can only do it over on YouTube. But I was literally sat here working on the laptop. So I was completely oblivious as to what was going on, but I do apologise. We got there in the end. It is the 1st of May, so pinch punch, first day of the month. It's Happy Hump Day as well. Can you believe it's May? I'm sure I've mentioned this before. I was due to take my good lady wife to Venice. What would it have been? 2020... Let me think. I think it was 2021. I think it was 2021. So I booked us a couple of flights and a hotel in Venice for our anniversary, wedding anniversary. Obviously, COVID decided that wasn't such a hot idea, so we ended up staying at home. And lo and behold, the fine folks at EasyJet, and I must admit I'd completely forgotten about this, EasyJet came back and said, "You do realise that we owe you a couple of flights, don't you?" So I looked at it. I've been to Bergamo a couple of times recently, and my wife has never been, so I thought, I'll take a look at that. So we've got 2 return flights for a tenner. Obviously the hotel will put a bit of expense on there, but yeah, on the 10th of this month we are heading off to Bergamo for a long weekend, so we will be missing a couple of shows, for which I apologise. But I won't be that apologetic when I'm sat there stuffing my face with mortadella, I can assure you. Let's have a look. Let me get rid of that. Let me get rid of that too, because I don't need any of that. There's Andy Darvell, who is on a top secret mission with AR Demolition at the moment, all NDA'd up to the hilt. Let's have a look. Who else do we have here? Gary Muirhead joined us as well. Good morning, Mr. Muirhead. Are you fully recovered? Are you still basking in the reflected glory from your exploits up at our Scott plant? Bet you are. Hope to see you doing that again soon. Andy Hare, we were talking about, excuse me, artisanal. I'm not entirely sure that is the right word for this, but artisanal manufacturers. I have a theory, and I always think of this theory specifically with demolition, but I have a theory that major manufacturers, so your Caterpillars, Komatsu, Hitachi, Liebherr, Volvo, JCB, all of the manufacturers of that kind are really, really, really good at making thousands, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands of precisely the same thing. If you want to deviate from that, that's where you end up dealing with, particularly demolition, you end up dealing with the likes of Larini or Craic, because you want it modified to your very specific specification. That's what Andy here does. There are plenty of attachments manufacturers out there that will sell you something off the shelf, but if you want something bespoke, a nicely crafted suit of clothing in attachment form, Andy, here's your man. He's up in Leeds. Go look him up. The company's called Northern Track. They do some very, 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 very good attachments. And best of all, they're in purple. What's not to love? Who wouldn't want a purple attachment? Let's have a look. Ken Hatter is here as well, as is our friend Footy. Mick says, morning all, how has done his business? So a bit of peace for a couple of hours. It's to be encouraged. Jonathan Duras is here as well. Andy Hare, listen, it makes me laugh. And I was taken to task by Fred. He wasn't particularly enamoured with my use of the scantily clad female demolition worker on Instagram yesterday. He is of the woke generation. I'm not even going to get into all of that. But I knew precisely what I was doing. And frankly, I think I've earned the right. I spend most of my time doing this kind of thing and talking about, women in construction and the need to help the disabled and the unemployed and all of the things, just to every once in a while just put my tongue firmly in my cheek and do something else. And to have people telling me that I need to do better. I've got the biggest demolition channel in the entire world, both here both on Instagram and on YouTube and on Facebook, the biggest in the world. Maybe there are some areas where I could do better, but I'm the biggest in the world. I think I've earned the right to occasionally just do things just for the hell of it. And as I said, being outraged about an attractive lady in a thong doing some demolition, if that's the way you want to be. But where was your outrage when we were covering Didcot or Redcar or the mass unemployments or the fraud that was taking place in the demolition industry? You were all very, very, not you lot over on our usual show, but everybody on Instagram was awfully quiet, didn't say a word. But then they decided, well, I can earn some woke brownie points here by putting my head above the parapet and telling this Burke in the hat to do better because he's featured a woman in a thong. Get over yourself. Let's have a look. Mick Norton from the wilds of Wakefield. He's actually watching. I'm hoping the queue is over and done with by now. I wonder what other people around you were thinking, Mick. I wonder if anyone was looking over your shoulder thinking, the hell is this? There's lots of people out there doing that most of the time, I think. Gary Muirhead. I'm Gary Muirhead's biggest fan, but man alive, he ruined today's Mystery Machine. Literally one frame is all it took for him to get it. But he was absolutely right. It was the JCB 714. I wish I could remember exactly what it was. They called a halt to that. And it was interesting how that all panned out. I mean, there was no plan to that, but I was talking about the fact that JCB had the 714. I'm fairly sure they had did they have an 812 or an 814 or something like that? There was a bigger version as well. I can't remember what it was called. But after a decade or so, they couldn't make it work, and yet Hydrema are still there plugging away. If you want yourself something between a dump truck or an ADT and a dumper, High dreamer. That's the way to go. And there is my friend Patrizio from TPMS Location. One of those. I think he's in France, but I think the company is in Italy. I think that's the way around it was. And there's Gary Muirhead. Go and sit in the corner, Gary. Don't ruin people's fun quite so quickly in the future. Question of the day was this. If you didn't work in construction, what would you do? I'll come back to that. Peter McKenna, the boss, has just been up to say how impressed he is with me and with the Tana compactor. I saw very quickly, just before I came on air, a video of the Tana compactor in action. Looks very good. Looks very good indeed. Peter says, I was originally in transport and now in construction. So would you go back? Given the choice, would you go back? Or if you weren't given a choice, would you go back? That's the point. Footy says, only other thing, I used to work for a company called British Aerospace. I remember British Aerospace. Used to process metal in stones with plastic going around in water, doing echo blasting. That's the only job I could have done. I love what I do now. You totally agree. Andy Darvell, who literally occasionally has his head in the clouds. I would have loved to have either joined the RF or the Royal Navy, be a fast jet pilot. But alas, I'm not brave enough for that. But an airline pilot would be second best. Indeed. Like your John Travolta. I'll come back to Bruce Dickinson, the lead singer from Iron Maiden. He's a commercial pilot, or he's a qualified commercial pilot. Remember Fred telling me a story about John Travolta and his family getting on a plane. I don't know if you're aware, but John Travolta is a commercial airline pilot, qualified airline commercial airline pilot, actually owns a 747, the last I heard, which he flies on a regular basis. And apparently him and his family were traveling somewhere, and they got on a plane, headed into first class because, he's John Travolta, and his daughter said to him, what are all these other people doing on our plane? Because she'd never travelled with other people. I am going to say bom dia to Fernando Wilson Silva, who, bom dia, I reckon that's Portuguese, which makes me wonder if Fernando Wilson Silva is in Portugal or, I reckon, possibly Brazil. But bom dia to you, my friend. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. The ASDAQ in Wakefield, Rio de Janeiro. They're so similar in so many ways. Gary Muirhead with the quote of the day. Question of the day. I would love to have been able to work in the porn industry, but I always found it very hard to get into. Well played, Mr. Muirhead. A couple of years ago, I could have done some introductions for you. Not sure it would have made it any easier, but, Dan Cullen would go into farming, loves using multiple attachments and tractors. Yeah, the construction and farming, very, very closely aligned, aren't they? Yeah, I did screw up when I was playing the TPMS video. I had my microphone switched on. Thank you for the warning there, Dan. Footy loved the TPMS dust suppression system. Dan Cullen did as well. Mick loved it as well. Andy Darvell loved it as well. Craig from CSW loved it as well. Universal. Yeah, my other half, question of the day, what would you like to have done if you weren't in construction? Well, my other half isn't in construction, but she would have liked to have been a midwife. Perfectly qualified. My wife is never happier than when she's covered in baby sick. Hers or anyone else's. Loves it. Footy says about the TPMS product. Fantastic idea for demolition companies. Really good. Awesome. It is hot. I agree. Jonathan Duras says decent bit of kit. Gary Muirhead says hot. And yes, I can clarify, and I will come back to it in just a moment. Our friend Patrizio did confirm you can operate that system from the cab of the machine. By Bluetooth, you've got a 200-meter range, completely wireless, so you can sit in your cab. If you've got a little bit further into the building or the wind has changed direction, you just break out the remote control, put the system exactly where you need it, and then go about your business. Awesome stuff. There is a UK alternative, apparently. I need to go and check this one out. Screenpod.co.uk do a track dust suppression unit. Not aware of that, but I do need to go and have a look. The concrete pumps at Despa, yes, indeed. Obviously, when I was in Bergamo. I had a bit of a brain fart there. We went to Bergamo. We went to the Atalanta Stadium, football stadium, to see the Jumbo in action. And obviously, I came away mightily impressed by the machine, everything that Despe had put into it, everything that Larini had put into it. But I have to say, the remote-controlled concrete mixers or concrete pumps with the dust suppression system, came away thinking, yeah, that's pretty damn smart as well. And Peter says, I've chucked the link into the WhatsApp group. I'll go and take a look at that immediately afterwards. And there is our friend Patrizio saying, Mark, the power of the cannon is 65 meters without wind. It can reach buildings of 12 floors. The machine can be controlled remotely 200 meters via Bluetooth. Thank you for your video. No, thank you. I took one of TPMS's videos, chopped it up and changed it around and put some music to it, but that was all their handiwork. So thank you very much indeed for that, Patrizio. Question of the day. Mick says, Chef, done the old 7061, 7062 City and Guilds years ago, still have a kitchen that most would die for. Do you know, it's a really strange thing. My best mate, Bruce, sadly no longer with us, ended up being a local builder. You know, dirt under his fingernails, turn his hand to anything and everything else. But when we were at school, he appeared to be destined to be a chef or possibly a baker. I do remember in one year winning the Cake of the Year competition. And if you met him, you know, big hairy ass builder type, yeah, loved a kitchen. That was the wind turbine coming down up in Finland. Perfect, top worker, modern environment to work in. Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I know lots of people on this show talk about, you know, you were encouraged not to look out the window when you were at school, and now you do that for a living. But imagine somewhere like Scotland or Norway or Denmark, or in that instance Finland, where you're looking out at, you know, fjords and mountains and all that kind of stuff. Awesome. And yes, it did come down absolutely beautifully. Let's have a look. Ken Hatcher says, I went to that case day. Yeah, I didn't. I was doing something else. For the life of me, I can't remember what, but I was doing something else. And there's lots of people going back to work. Do you remember the live eagle that was on the case stand? I most certainly do. And I also remember the inflatable one, which on one day it was particularly windy up at Hillhead, and the damn thing was getting very close to hitting people on the head. Question of the day again. What would you do if you weren't in construction? Jim Turner says, question of the day, probably split my time 80-20 between machine development, testing and farming, which is exactly what I'm trying to get into. Long may that continue. Not a fan of American cheese. Try a steak sandwich with Stilton. That will make you think. American cheese is weird stuff, and I apologize to any of our American cousins that happen to be watching this. But has anybody ever enjoyed or endured cheese whiz? What a deeply unpleasant thing that is. It's basically cheese in a can. That's horrible. Do remember being I won't bore you with why we ended up in New York, but we ended up in New York for my 50th birthday, and went for breakfast one morning, and we ordered, I think we were in like an Applebee's or something like that. So I ordered, you know, the eggs and the bacon and the pancakes and all the things. And a waitress says to my wife, would you like cheese with that? My wife went, yes, why the hell not? Pouring on the molten cheese. Not my kind of thing at all. Gary Muirhead says, you look like Paul Whitehouse from The Far Show. Listen, I aspire to that. Paul Whitehouse is a hero as far as I'm concerned, particularly over on the Gone Fishing show. But I was a huge, huge fan of The Far Show. Suit You Sir and all that kind of stuff. Loved all that. Yeah, Mick writing off anything that comes from Greenwich. Rightly so, I think. Yes, Andy Hare, small specialist artisanal attachment manufacturers. Tough one. Have to think about this carefully. Look around you, Mr. Hare. Look around. Great talk and walk. Thank you very much indeed, Craig. High Dreamer. Yeah, High Dreamer. I certainly think they count. Hoodig. Yeah, totally agree with them as well. Menzie Muck. 100%. Those are precisely the kind of people that I was looking for. Peter McKenna, I can see why MB Crusher is your sponsor, Mark. You're crushing it as usual. Well done. Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much indeed. Whoever gets in nowadays will be pretty useless unless they have a completely blank canvas. Start afresh and move forward. I think that's, and obviously I was aligning politics and leadership and demolition and leadership and construction and leadership as well. And I think that's one of the issues that we have. I think we now let me liken it to football. I endure David Moyes as the West Ham manager. David Moyes would rather not lose a game than win a game. Every team that he sets up is not to lose. It's not to go out and be entertaining, be exciting, and to actually beat teams. It's to not lose. And the more I think about politicians, they are exactly the same. You know, I need to keep this gig for another 4 years after this initial 4 years. So I will not rock the boat. I won't do anything extreme or anything like that. And I would say exactly the same about the demolition field. I can think of, literally off the top of my head, I can think of two people that stood for the presidency of both the NFDC and the IDE, and they both stood on a platform of, we're going to shake things up. And one of them even said to me, you know, I'll first 6 months, I'll just get my feet under the table, and then I will start to shake things up. They won't know what's hit them, he said. Made no difference whatsoever. It was, in both instances, both of those people that were planning radical change have ended up with presidencies that are entirely forgettable. And I realise it's not easy. I realise that everything done within politics, everything done within, you know, the hierarchy of the NFDC or the IDE, it comes as a result of committee. But as a result of that, what is the expression? A camel is a horse designed by committee. That's what you end up with. You either end up with just repeating the same old nonsense you've been doing for the last 20, 30 years, or you end up doing things that are half-cocked. And looking at the NFDC, there was a time, and I was there at the time. There was a time when they were literally leading the industry. You know, when you talked about the industry leadership, you meant the NFDC. If there was a big change for good or for ill, the NFDC had led that charge. Now it's women in construction, yes, we'll be part of that. Mental health, oh yes, we'll be part of that. They haven't actually done anything new at all in as long as I can remember. Dan Cullen, that video was made to gain followers. A scantily clad woman swinging a hammer. Yeah. I didn't make it, you know, I didn't exploit the young lady. That video already existed. I just borrowed it and used it for my own devices. But yeah, and it's picked us up loads and loads of followers. Just playing the game, people. Back then, there wasn't this need for a cab on dumpers, as is the case nowadays. Yeah, I wonder if JCB would consider bringing back the 714, given the shift in the market and the fact that we all like to have a cab now. I wonder. Just asking for dust suppression on the landfill. Is that bad? You can't see more than a foot in front. Yeah, landfills. Obviously, landfills are a bit of a smelly place because, hey, they're full of rubbish. But dust and seagulls, worst two things about a landfill, I always think. Inflatable what? Does your missus know you have these strange things lying about? What was I talking about that was inflatable? What was I talking about that was inflatable? I can't remember. Some squirty cheese isn't bad, but can't beat a nice slice of either double Gloucester, crumbly Lancashire, or Black Sticks Blue. Also quite partial to smoked cheeses too. Do you know, that's where you and I part company. Crumbly and strong, you know, listen, one of the reasons I'm going to Bergamo to go and stuff my face with gorgonzola. I don't mind blue, I don't mind smelly, and all the things. Totally, 100%. Don't do smoked cheese. Can never understand why it tastes vaguely of bacon. And I don't have a problem with that. I like bacon as much as the next guy. but I don't want it in my cheese. Yeah, Sam Allardyce, percentage game. Yeah, our old manager, Fat Sam, that was exactly the way he played. Now, many things are said on the show. Some I agree with, some I disagree with, some I despise vehemently. But Mick, our friend Mick, if anyone who I'd like to see run the NFDC, it's John Woodward. That man would get my vote any time of the day. Me too. Me too. Yeah, 100%. I think the period of time in which Terry Quarmby and then John Woodward were the presidents of the IDE was about as good as the IDE ever got and possibly ever will get. But yeah, unfortunately, John is retired now anyway. Don't see him getting the vote because, yes, he would do things his own way. And he'd wear some bloody good suits while he was doing it as well. Peter McKenna says, Gorgonzola is quite nice, I do admit. I also like freshly made mozzarella. Yeah, you and me both. Love me a bit of burrata as well. Oh. And there's another cheese that so mozzarella is like a solid ball of cheese. Burrata has got some of the milk still in it, but there's another one that the Italians do, which is called straccia or straccia, which is basically you know that point where you've got your curds and your whey. Well, this is the curds. The whey is taken off. So rather than having a piece of cheese, you've got strands of cheese. It's very, very milky. And it is delicious. A nice strong cheese, a decent cup of coffee to wash it down. Lovely. Yeah, see, now I part company with that as well. I'm very specific about this. Tea, fine with cheese. Coffee, no, that's a ginger nut biscuit as far as I'm concerned. I realise I have my own taste. That's where I am. That's another show in the can, people. The weather doesn't look like it's particularly suitable for another walk and talk, so I may take a day off today, or I may take a day off of actually taking the camera with me. Do still need to do my walk, so I'll be back here tomorrow. What we got here? Dan Cullen, yes, have a lovely day, guys. Must continue the job hunt. Yes, good luck with that, Dan. I hope to get you back in employment very, very soon indeed. But that will do us for today. That's an hour and 14 minutes. That's more than enough for anyone, I would suggest. So everybody, go and have a good day. Look after yourself. Enjoy yourselves. Don't get into any trouble. Don't do anything I would do. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. That was the way it goes around. I'll see you again tomorrow. Till then, everybody, have a fan-dabby-dozy day. 1st of May, pinch punch, and all of that. See you tomorrow.